We have an unidentified flying object.
I'm Jack Oswald, and you're listening.
This is Nathan Hamay, and you're listening to...
I'm Richard C. Hoagland, and you're listening to...
I'm Art Bell, and you're listening to Dr. J Radio Live.
We have an unidentified flying object.
Second, welcome back to another episode of Dr. J Radio Live. I hope you guys are ready for an amazing night. Now, if you haven't checked out social media or, of course, the website to see who's playing tonight, well, then I will give you a quick moment to do so. First, I want to tell you that everybody who's ever been on the show, if you want to see where books they have to offer or videos, just click on the books and videos tab on top. Don't forget L.A. Marzulli's and Richard Shaw's newest series of Watchers. The Watchers 10 movie is amazing, and on top of that it has a link to the show, which I thought was really interesting to know, and you can get that and an entire bundle, of course, on the website, as well as Shannon Panzo's Zock's Memory. And if you want to register a domain name, you can also do that by clicking on that link. Don't forget also about our friend Nassim Harriman and the Resonance Academy, and Dr. Michael Sala in Hawaii for the Exopolitics Institute. Also will be the Earth Files link again soon for our friend Linda Moulton Howe. And of course, we want to thank our partners who are also streaming this show. First, going from west to east, we want to thank Michael Vara and Ira Robinson from Late Night in the Midlands for carrying this show. On top of that, we also have Angel Espino of PSN Radio, and in the United Kingdom, JC of D Program Radio Network. And right now you're listening to our very own network, which is Coast to Coast PM Radio Network. I thought that was a really catchy name, so I decided to grab it, even though it has no relation to their AM. But nonetheless, now that we've given thanks to all the people, I'm really excited about tonight's show, because now that you've had a moment to see exactly who it is, this man is full of knowledge. He's always in the know of what's new, and no interview I've had with him has ever been repeated, because he knows so many facts that each interview is always something new. And he's very intelligent, and I'm very happy to be able to call him my friend. He's a researcher, a lecturer, and much, much more than that. Let's give it up for the one, the only, Robert Morningstar. Robert, welcome back.
Thank you, John. It's great here. It's great to be here.
I'm very excited for you.
Always fun.
Yes, yes. And I did mention also, we have, of course, joining us on the show, my co-host live in London, Johnny Webb. So let me tell you guys, I hope wherever zone you're listening to this, right now in the Americas, it's 7 p.m., 7:03 p.m. Pacific time. On the East Coast, it is where Robert is. It is 10:03 Eastern time, and where Johnny Webb is, it's really early, 3 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time, and everywhere you are around the world that you're listening to, use those 3 points as a reference to find out how you can be on the live portion as opposed to the repeated. So, Robert, let's talk about this first, because we talked about this in our past. Can you get a little closer to the mic?
Sure.
Okay. Let's talk about the elections, rigging, what James Comey said about ISIS, as well as what he said about Hillary's email, how he avoided the question on Senate Hill with regards to, is the foundation connected, and did he look into it, and about the foundation itself.
Well, all you need to do to find out about the foundation itself is look at the free movie online now, Clinton Cash. Peter Schweitzer's book was made, Clinton's Cash was made into a film. It's about an hour and 10 minutes long, and it will reveal to you why Bill, Chelsea, and Hillary made 3 speeches at the Democratic National Convention, and not a single one of them mentioned the Clinton Foundation. So if you want
That's
to
right.
find out,
And you know what else was not mentioned when Bill Clinton was speaking? 1971, I met a girl, at Yale Law School. Then he talked about 1974, 1997, 1999. He talked about every year from meeting Hillary on, but what year did he not talk about? 1998. Why? That was the year he was impeached for the Monica Lewinsky scandal.
He didn't mention earlier years in Oxford where he had to leave the school.
Ooh.
Yeah, he was forced to leave the Oxford
Academy.
University.
Yeah, in England, that's a top school like Cambridge. I mean, that's super Ivy League. That
Right.
makes Harvard, Yale, and Stanford together look like. Sorry, people listening in those states.
Well, he was a Rhodes Scholar. He got involved in a scandal, which was not very different from the impeachment, except that it was he assaulted an English girl, and of course, being shamed out of the university, he didn't have the face to come back to the United States, and instead he went to Russia.
Whoa.
So he spent
Soviet
time.
Union at the time, or post-Soviet.
Yeah, and he got involved and connected in the Soviet Union and got involved with business in the Soviet Union.
So I'm sure he got involved with Putin during when Putin was colonel of the KGB.
Putin was in puberty.
Oh, okay. You're talking about early. You're talking about early times. I hear you.
Yeah, his college years, would be 40 years or something. Mm-hmm. Anyway, the scandals, the media is in the shark frenzy attacking Trump. And of course, those of us who believe what we know rather than what we see on the media know that they're doing a real hatchet job on him. So I've been investigating Mr. Khan, the big blowout that they had over Trump responding to the criticisms made by this Muslim parent of a soldier who died. And a lot of people have taken me to task on it. Oh, he insulted the Gold Star families, plural. He didn't insult the Gold Star families. He responded to a very critical and hostile man who got on stage and politicized his position. The man got on stage as a Gold Star family. But you cannot expect that as a shield, when you come out with vitriol and hostility and antagonism. You can't say, "Oh, I'm a Gold Star father. You can't criticize me back." So that's the first thing. The second thing is this: in the days since he made that speech and the media picked up the football and started ramming it, just throwing it wildly all about, it comes out that Mr. Khan worked for the Clinton Foundation. Came out today that he was paid $375,000 as a lawyer for the Clinton Foundation, and that he's very deeply invested and in the law firm that handles Muslim applications for immigration into the United States. So as I told my friend Richard Hoagland the other night, the motive behind his appearance is also something that you have to look at. And to be honest with you and anyone who's listening, I didn't feel any sympathy for this man. He was a very bitter, angry hatchet man, and he was just spouting vitriol. And in the days that followed, when he was interviewed on every other channel, I kept watching him, and I just saw a very angry, vicious man. And I really wonder whether he encouraged his son to join the United States Army, whether he was for it, because I get a feeling that his hostility and his anger is half at Trump and half at himself. So,
do you think, obviously, that couple, there's all these scandals. You make very good points. Was obviously, it's very blatant. Even mainstream news picked up on this, that Clinton baited him with that. I mean,
exactly.
He wrote no less than 5 tweets during that convention or that period alone where he spoke that one night.
That's right. They baited him.
Yeah.
And you see, the reason is that, I talk a lot about mind control, and I try to break it. I try to break the effects of media mind control on the public. And in the past, it used to be that they would weasel word their stories in order to sway you mentally, intellectually. But over the last 8 years in particular, there's been a change in strategy, and what they do is they manipulate you emotionally. And I've found a great dichotomy psychologically between Republicans and independents and Democrats. Republicans and independents still think mentally and intellectually, and they look at the candidate with ideas in their minds. However, the Democrats have been so conditioned emotionally that I consider them emotionally disturbed. They are like one person. Sheeple, but it's an angry sheep, because when I get into discussion or debate or on this topic, which I do regularly, I have found that I can have reasonable, rational conversations with independents, with Republicans, with conservatives, and argue all the flaws of all the candidates. But when I engage a Democrat, they get hostile. They start trembling, and I'm not kidding. I had a friend. I thought he was a friend.
Yeah, it happens. You're not in the middle. I have yet to meet someone in the middle. You're either for him or you're against him.
But when I said that I was, that I favored Trump, this friend started trembling and shaking and insulting me, and the tremors were coming from the pit of his stomach. There's a way of shaking him really.
So, what do you think about the controversy that people say about Trump having access to nukes? Because this is my own speculation, which I'm not supposed to do on shows. Shows are purely objective, where the host lets the guest speak. But I'm going to throw this one thing in my head. I don't think he'd be stupid enough to use them. Maybe he might try to scare someone, but hopefully that person doesn't fire back with their own nukes. The point is I hope he does what he says, where he gets Russia on the right side, because then you'll have the two superpowers working together, especially since Russia and China are together.
Right. I agree with you completely. I think that this is a bogus issue, and that I'll tell you, I dread the idea of Hillary Clinton having her fingers on it.
Yes. Oh, can you imagine?
Look at what she did.
Yeah.
Without nuclear weapons, look at the mess that she has made of the Middle East, our relationship with Russia. Remember that big phony press conference that she had with the plastic button and the reset? What she reset was she threw back Russian-American relations about 50 years and has gotten us basically back into a Cold War mentality. Yeah. That's what she's done with Russia. Then look at the destruction that she's done throughout the Middle East.
Oh, yes. Libya, Egypt, all over the place.
Now, the connections between Hillary Clinton and the Muslim Brotherhood are really disturbing. They supported the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. They took over the country. They started to impose Sharia law. And now we find that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has contributed more than $20 million to her campaign.
Wow.
So she's in bed with the Muslim faction of the New World Order, the pro-Muslim faction of the New World Order, which includes the European Union and this forced immigration policy, the forced migration policy that they're following, that's intended to destroy the unity, the cohesiveness, and the identity of European culture. This is a culture war that's being waged, and it's nothing new. If our listeners will go to UFOdigest.com and scroll down on the left side, you will find something called the Kalergi Plan. The Kalergi Plan has been running since 1950, and it's a plan that was fashioned by the Soviets, communists. Communists and communist ideologues hate these things. They hate nation, they hate culture, they hate ethnicity, and identity, individual identity. So they made this social engineering plan called the Kalergi Plan, which was intentionally to destroy those things: national identity and nation, ethnicity and ethnic identity, and culture. Because the only way that a one-world communist government can come to be is by fashioning a one-world government with a one-world concept and one culture, monoculture, or the euphemism they use is multiculturalism. but it's really a mishmash of really incompatible cultural concepts. You cannot reconcile Western Christian civilization with Islamic civilization, if you want to call it civilization. They are antithetical and irreconcilable.
No, and the whole point of especially the jihadists, the extremists, is to kill as many people as you go down. Let's check with London for some thoughts real quick. Johnny, what do you got?
Someone's asking on the Facebook if Robert has seen the video with Bill Clinton and Larry King, where Larry King says Ted Turner would back you, but no dope. Do you know? Have you seen that video, Robert?
Oh, I probably saw it on the first run. It sounds like a video
like it's under
to
MKL.
his candidate days, right? Well, it's not surprising.
It's a live feed, and it looks to me like since I've seen the video, it's a live feed that sort of shouldn't be airing, but it's airing, and basically it's showing Bill Clinton sitting down in a zombie-like state is the only word I can explain. He looks miles away.
Oh, yes, I have seen that. Yes,
so whether he's on dope, I don't know. But, I know that you mentioned that when he was in Oxford, in England, when he served over here, he mentioned on the British television that he was a doper. Not that makes any difference, there's a lot of people that smoke dope or have smoked dope.
Right.
Oh, it doesn't make a difference. Look at our president.
But he did
right
rape the girl.
He wrote
Okay,
his
listen,
own
let's
book
stop.
that he used to use cocaine and marijuana regularly.
Yeah, let's stop mincing words. He had to leave Oxford because he raped a girl.
Oh,
okay?
Ouch.
So, Paula Jones and the whole train of ladies that he abused, that's nothing new. He's been doing that. Right. The one whose husband killed himself.
Let's come in.
I wonder how much hush money some of them got to not tell the full story, if there is much more to what they've already said, because they've already made good money. Lewinsky got a decent paycheck for that.
I don't think so, but she's lucky to come out with her life.
That's right. You're absolutely right about that. And
but Johnny, I want to say to Johnny.
Go ahead.
I want to say to Johnny, congratulations on Brexit. I was really working hard to convince my British friends.
Hey, I think that's so much better to end a new world order. What do you say, Johnny?
Well, I thought it was a good idea, but then, what do? We voted that we wouldn't have unelected officials or bureaucrats in secret offices.
You also voted that you would get money every week, or save money every week, right?
That's true.
Because we've always spent money on worldly countries, where we're colonial, we've always picked up and propped up other countries. So we've never had an issue with that. The issue was that the fact that, if we didn't vote out and stayed in, that would have been the last vote. We would have only been bureaucratically, elected, back people that aren't elected by public. And so what disturbed me was straight after that, they changed the Prime Minister and they didn't give us an election. They just re-elected a new Prime Minister. And again, it's almost like unelected officials being put into power and lots of sweeping power changes coming through, who I believe are not elected. Those powers shouldn't be put forward until after we've had a re-election and then we voted. So to me,
you have to keep pushing. You have to keep pushing. This is a war for freedom. It's a war to restore your Magna Carta, just as we're fighting a war here to preserve and protect and restore the Constitution. So it's not a one campaign issue, and they just keep trying to retrench and regroup. So we have to keep doing the same thing here. But I was very happy when I found out that the vote had gone toward Brexit, and I'm encouraging all my European friends, save Europe, and the only way to save Europe is to Brexit, Nexit, Swexit.
Grexit with the Greece.
Yeah.
What did you make of Robert? What did you make of the French European MP that came on stage and said, "Look, we're being watched by, people from other planets," and
that was an amazing thing. That was an amazing thing. People didn't believe it, but I speak French and I understand French, and there he was, saying exactly what the subtitles said, and that's a hard thing to fathom, except that it does represent a partial disclosure.
It's
I mean, for
closure.
the last few years, I've been part of the push for disclosure, and some people really believe that Hillary Clinton is going to be the person to divulge the secrets. But man, after every lie that she's ever told and lies that she tells every day, I would not believe a single thing that she were to reveal to me about UFOs. And as I say to people, it's not the government that's going to tell us about UFOs. It's we who are going to educate the government with what we already know.
Before we jump on that topic, while we were speaking, Tom in Florida has got a question for you. Go ahead, Tom, or comment.
Yeah, so do you see this whole, I think a lot of people are giving, there's a common thread that seems to kind of be being foisted upon us about Islam is a religion, so we just need to give it a blanket acceptance. And so I think when people try to expose this ideology and political tie-in with a religious philosophy that's twisted with so much misogyny and everything else, I just see it as people are not doing the work. They're just giving it you said it's a religion, so therefore it gets a free pass. Is that something you resonate with?
I'm so glad you asked that question, because this is the fact. Islam is a form of government first that imposes a religion in order to control people. And this is the reason that the McCarran Act of 1952, it's an immigration act, stated that Muslims were not to be allowed to migrate to the United States or to become citizens for these reasons, and they are cited in that act. One, no one who practices polygamy is allowed to enter the United States or become a U.S. citizen. No one who owes allegiance to another government first and foremost and cannot pledge full allegiance to the United States government or would work against it is allowed into the United States. This is why communists were banned. Communists are ideologically and emotionally related and dedicated to communism as a form of government, and that posits the overthrow of all of the forms of government. For that reason, communists were not allowed to enter the United States. The same reason applies to Islam. Islam is a form of government first that imposes religion in after its conquest. And there was a third thing. Oh yes, paying taxes. Islam is a form of government that demands taxes from all its adherents, and those taxes are paid at the mosque, and those taxes are then sent on to the central head of that particular Islamic faction. And there are basically two, Sunni and Shia, and they've been at war with each other
1,400 years
since a week or two or three after Muhammad died.
Which was in what, the early 700s? I know he reigned in the late 600s.
600s, in the 600s.
Yeah,
630.
600s I know is when he reigned, but did he make it to 780 or
no? He did. No, he died around 635.
Oh, okay. So he.
Are you familiar with the work of Dr. Bill Warner that kind of gives a?
Yes, I am.
I really like listening to that guy because he gives more of a clinical view. He doesn't get all emotional. For him, it's let's just look at the facts. Let's just look at the statistics and the numbers that this guy shows about how Islam spread and the method that they used and the destruction of civilization that they wreaked. They were part of, evidently from what he was saying, now maybe you can corroborate this. They were part of the burning of Alexandria? Was that part of their doing?
No, the burning of Alexandria was far earlier, and so that cannot be ascribed to
okay, all right, my bad. So,
no,
yeah.
but they did destroy much of the culture as they conquered during the year of that 100 years from the time of Muhammad's death to the conquest of Iberia, which is now Spain. It's a very interesting revelation. I believe the man's name is Tom Hollander. He's an Englishman who did a study of the evolution or the development of Islam and the spread of Islam, and he found that during the first 100 years of the Arab conquest, there is no mention of Muhammad. That Muhammad was incidental to the Arab conquest. It didn't seem to be driving the Arab conquest. And about 100 years after the Arab conquests were completed, that the Arab caliphs looked at Muhammad and elevated him to be the religion with which they could control all of their empire. So it's a very interesting thing that's being revealed in this English documentary. If you go into YouTube and look for the true history of Islam, and you will come across it. But I'm very glad that you asked this question, because there's so much hype and lies around the true nature of Islam that...
Well, I also find it disturbing is this moral equivalency people try to make. They say, well, the Crusades are just as bad, and Warner was showing that the number of battles and the number of Crusades were minuscule compared to what the Islamic Crusades were all about.
Yeah. Plus the Hollywood hype. You know, the movie that was made by Ridley Scott about the Crusades, it's really an indictment of Western civilization. And had those Crusaders not fought and died and won those battles, Islam would have overwhelmed the West. There would have been no Western civilization, really. So,
well, Robert, John in London, what do you make of Wahhabism, you know, from Saudi Arabia?
Wahhabism is one of the most fanatical forms of Islam, and it's really the terror center. That and Shia are mirror opposites of each other. And let me say, folks, I practiced Sufism for many years and found the difference between Sufism and general Islam. I studied the writings of their mystics. I've studied their laws. And I can tell you that they believe in something that we don't believe in, and they call it sacred violence. They believe that God condones killing and murder if it's to spread the faith, and that if you die committing some heinous act, that if you die committing any heinous act that is directed toward establishing the Islamic Caliphate upon the whole world, that you will go to their heaven. The other thing that I found,
their heaven is the one that has, I've heard,
72 virgins.
And you're treated like a king.
Each virgin has about 25 maids that you have to look after as well.
However, that metaphysics aside, the fact is that I feel that Islam culturally is a culture in psychosis, and the reason is that it's divided from itself sexually. It has so despised womanhood, and it has so debased women in its culture, and their standing a little higher than animals, you know, and that's not an exaggeration. They believe that women are the devil himself in the flesh, and they despise them. They also believe certain factions, Iranian factions, for example, Sheikhism and Ismailism, believes that only love between men is real divine love. I'm telling you, these are the things that the media keeps out of public view. You have to go in there yourself and read them yourself. Read about Sheikhism. Read about Ismailism. Read about the murder of Ali. And how that death is the icon of the Shia Muslims. It basically comes down to this, that because Ali was murdered and became the first martyr in the Shia religion, that becomes the model for all Shias' perfect way to die, because they get the express train to heaven. But the reason he died is that Muhammad tried to establish a royal line, and he had preached against that. He had preached against that throughout his let's call it his ministry, and he had three main preachers who were his followers, and they believed that they were rightfully going to be the leaders of this monotheistic one God religion. But on his deathbed, Muhammad decreed that he wanted the son of the husband of his daughter to become the new prophet, and establish him and a lineage, a bloodline lineage, to be the inheritors and the directors and the leaders of Islam. And these three others rebelled against that, and as a result, they wound up murdering Ali. And so the Sunnis broke away from the Shia, and the Shia accused the Sunnis.
So that's the centuries-old argument that they've been making, right?
That's right. That's right.
Let me ask you this question. This may sound dumb, but at the same time, just for people who don't know out there, who just know about Muslim, they go to mosques and they read from the Quran, and they pray 5 times a day facing east to Mecca, and aside from that, what can you tell the general public? Just a stupid question, but it's just about Muhammad, Prophet Muhammad. Other than he was a prophet, what did he do in his life to affect the beginning of such a religion?
Well, he didn't do much. He was not a very accomplished.
Did he kill people? Did he claim to be speaking to God? Did he try to do miracles or what?
Yes, he did. He claimed to have received the revelation from the angel Gabriel. And he was in a meditation in a cave in Arabia, and he claimed that he was being tormented by jinns and demons.
Yes.
And in walked the angel Gabriel and lifted him, plucked him up by the neck, and choked him and forced him to profess that there is only one God, Allah, and that he was his prophet. And subsequently, he was infused with a great fervor for this new religion and began to overthrow the pantheon of gods that reigned in Arabia. Mm-hmm. And as a result, he became a threat to the culture. Actually, he was a destroyer of the ancient Arabian culture, which was pantheistic. It worshipped many, many gods and goddesses. But he started to affect the economy.
The ancient Egypt and ancient Greece did the same.
Yes, they had temple prostitution, and temple was the center of commerce as well.
Yeah.
So when he disrupted that, he was taken aside and told that if he insisted on that path, that he would lose his life. And they made a deal with him to accept the 3 main goddesses of ancient Arabia, Uzza, Manat, and Alat. And they proposed to him that if he would accept these 3 deities into his religion, that they could make an accommodation. So Muhammad, and this is in the Quran, this is what the Satanic verses really deals with. Muhammad said, I'll have to consult with the angel Gabriel, and I'll have to go and ask him if this is acceptable to Allah. So Muhammad claimed to have gone out into the desert and encountered the angel Gabriel once again and inquired whether he should accept the 3 demonic goddesses into the new religion. And the angel Gabriel, as he appeared to him, said, yes, sure, go right ahead. It's in keeping with the will of Allah. So he was made to make a public proclamation, and he was asked, Muhammad, what about Uzza, Manat, and Alat? And he said, we accept them as 3 birds of paradise into our religion. And so this accommodation was made, but shortly thereafter, he recanted, and he said, no, I made a mistake. I was fooled. It wasn't the angel Gabriel. It was actually Satan who appeared to me and pretended to be the angel Gabriel, and he tricked me into doing this. But the proclamation had already been made, and the agreement arrived at, and the integration of Uzza, Manat, and Alat was achieved. And who they are the 3 daughters of Satan who were thrown out of heaven with him from time immemorial. And that is related in the book, The Satanic Verses, by Salman Rushdie. He tells that...
Really? What year was Salman Rushdie's book?
1988 is when it came out. And he did several things in there. He actually predicted the Lockerbie bombing.
Really?
The book opens with a 747 exploding over England and 2 men falling out of the sky. And during their fall out of the sky, one is taken over by the angel Gabriel and one is taken over by the devil himself. And in the course of this novel, Rushdie reveals the real history of Islam. And this I can confirm because I studied the real history of Shia Islam, and the reason I can relate all of these things to you is that I taught at Oberlin College in the East Asian Studies Department, and while there, I became exposed to the work of Professor Joseph Eliash, who was the Western world's foremost expert on Shia Islam at the time, which was the late 70s into the 1980s. And Professor Eliash died typing a manuscript at his typewriter. He typed to the last second of his life to produce this manuscript called Twelver Islam. The Shia means twelver, means following the 12 imams. And in it he reveals how a heresy took over Islam after the satanic verses of Muhammad in the 600s, 300 years later. Another charismatic god intoxicant came up and started to sway the masses toward his interpretation, and his name was Muhammad Ash-al-Magani. Ash-al-Magani preached that he had become God by following a particular philosophy and methodology, and he preached that he had become God by always following the opposite of the truth, and as a result, the opposite of the truth is a higher cosmic principle than truth. So basically what that espouses is Luciferism.
Huh. And Luciferism is definitely different than modern day Satanism.
Yes.
In that they believed in Lucifer. Someone gave as a gag gift to me a book on Luciferian magic, and I didn't read it. I just flipped through it, and I just thought it was comical, but maybe dangerous. So tell us a little bit about Luciferianism.
It's quite in vogue. Luciferianism, Satanism, is a passion. You know, I describe it as passion without reason, and I describe Luciferism as intelligence without love. It's something that worships intelligence and mind and despises all of those other attributes that we call humanity. And many secret societies have come around and converged on this ideal, and the papacy, I feel, has been taken over by it, and steadily, and it's revealed in the pederasty and the pedophilia that has been exposed over the last 10 to 15 years. And it's a real twist that despises humanity. Lucifer hates humanity. That's something that people have to understand. There is no kindness, there is no goodness, there is nothing human about Lucifer. Lucifer
was a god, right? Or an angel, fallen angel.
He was a fallen angel. He was the afterbirth of the universe. He had a role, but he rebelled against his...
And the role was the highest angel.
He was the highest angel, but he wanted to become God. And the only way to become God, if you're not God, is to kill God. And that is Lucifer's fall. That is the reason.
What's the greatest trick the devil has ever pulled?
To make you believe that he doesn't exist.
Damn right. You got it correct, my friend.
Listen, let me give you a very brief description of what Lucifer is. Lucifer is an evil idea. And when it's immaterial, it's just a bad idea. But when
we had Michael Aquino on last night, and he actually talked about Church of Satan and Temple of Set. So I'd love to hear what you know.
Okay, well, let me just say this. When a bad idea gets into one head, bad things happen. When a bad idea gets into a million heads, horrible things happen. And the first and best example is Nazism.
Yes, they were very into the occult. They used to have Aleister Crowley there all the time, right?
They were worshippers of intelligence. They worship logic and they worship intelligence.
Even the swastika is an occult symbol from 2,000 years ago.
But it's a good one. It's a good one that was twisted to evil purposes.
Yeah.
That's the point about it. The idea, when an evil idea occupies a million heads, and that is Nazism and communism, both Russian and Chinese communism are the prime examples. Millions upon millions of people die. Everyone talks about Hitler and the Holocaust and 6 million dead, and then 4 million Germans died and 25 million Russians. Mao Zedong wiped out 80 million people. Joseph Stalin murdered 30 million people. They far outdid Hitler. But they only harp on Hitler. My point is this. When an evil idea gets into a mass society, the mass society goes insane.
And it will make it happen, right? They'll manifest
Uh,
it.
Pol Pot in Cambodia, the killing fields of Cambodia. He was a communist that was trained in France, educated in France, and went back to Cambodia. And that what every communist believes is that you have to destroy the current culture, the current ethnic identity, and just destroy it completely in order to rebuild again. So when Pol Pot went back to Cambodia, he and his intellectuals took over. They moved all the city people into the country. They moved all the country people into the cities. They broke up every marriage. They killed all the university professors, killed the intelligentsia, and the country went into chaos, and 4 million people died. That's what happens when communism takes over. And communism has been taking over the United States since the death of President Kennedy.
And even Bernie Sanders blatantly said he's a socialism. And what are the difference between socialism and communism?
Communist is a socialist in a hurry.
Yeah.
That's what I understand.
I know they're just different names, semantics.
The Democrats don't realize that they have been indoctrinated to follow communist ideology. And that's one of the greatest dangers we face today. And the emotional component, the anger, the emotional manipulation is the most dangerous thing about this current Democratic campaign. They're not appealing to intellect or reason. Mm-hmm. They're appealing just to pure, raw anger and hateful emotions. They accuse Trump of hate-mongering, but they are the ones that are mongering the hate against Trump and anybody who believes in him.
Yeah, especially if you look at all the ads. Every ad I've seen from Hillary Clinton directed at Donald Trump, even before she was the official nominee, and when she was just the supposed nominee because of her superdelegates, but that was when Bernie still said he would contest the convention. But if you saw the convention, the DNC, when Bernie moved all his delegates to support Hillary, you could just see his face before he said that. I mean, the camera was right on him, and you could just see in his mind, damn, it should have been me on that stage,
Absolutely. And so many people, when asked, they would say, who is your number one candidate? They would say Trump. And who's number two? They would say Sanders.
Yeah.
And then they'd ask others, who do you want to say? Sanders. And who do you want number two? It's Trump. It's because people want people there in front of them, leading them, who tell them the truth. Whatever it is that they believe, at least they tell the truth.
But why are these polls showing Hillary is beating Trump by double digits now?
Because they're all slanted and skewed, and the questions are engineered in such a way as to skew the poll. And then at other times they just blatantly change and lie. And that's why I don't answer polls. When pollsters call me, I say, how much? First of all, I play along for a little while, and I say, how much do you want to pay? And he says, we don't pay for polls. I say, are you being paid? Well, yes, I'm being paid. Well, if you're being paid to take the poll, why won't you pay me, who's giving you it will make the poll worthwhile. So I play along with that, but I tell them, listen, I don't answer polls, whichever poll they are, because I feel that answering polls is giving information to the enemy. They're going to take your opinion, and then they're going to fashion a program and spin their program to appeal to your opinion with no intention of fulfilling your hopes. So don't give them information.
The first time I saw Donald Trump yesterday, I believe it was, when he thought that he might be actually losing the election, when he said, I'm worried about this election being rigged. All you Republicans and everyone else out there, please keep a close watch on what happens. Now, do you see it going that way? Because one of the few times we've been shut down from airing on air was when Senator Gravel, who served as senator for 20-some years and then congressman for another 15, 16 years, or what terms are they, 6 years, 18 years, and then before that, just involved in politics since the 40s. He says we are engaged in election rigging, and it was almost exposed in 2000.
Yeah. Well, I can only tell you what I saw in 2008 and 2012, and those were rigged elections. When they sent Black Panthers to intimidate voters in Philadelphia, that's a rigged election. When 98% of the black population votes for one candidate, that's really statistically impossible. You know, there cannot be such a hive mind mentality in one group or one section of the population to that degree. Then we heard, I know I got a lot of reports about the buses that were rolling around in the tri-state area up there in Michigan, Wisconsin, and even Iowa, where they were busing voters from one state to another, and they were voting in one state and voting in the second state and voting in the third state, and that's why they're so against voter ID. The other point is bringing this mass of migrants into the United States and then allowing them to vote. I think it's unconscionable, it's unconstitutional, but California has approved it. And that's the end of the United States. I mean, it's American citizens who are the ones who have the vote, the privilege of the vote, but they are giving it to so many ineligible voters that they're going to be beholden to the Democratic Party. That's their plan.
I'm reading some of the interesting comment. Tom, go ahead and say what you're writing.
Well, there was an article recently that talked about how out of all of the entire population, that after you disqualify everybody else that's not available to vote, and the people that didn't vote, et cetera, out of everybody that in the entire population, it was only 9% of the entire population that actually picked Clinton and/or /Trump out of the primaries. So the entire primary process only involved 9% of the population.
Right. That's because of the two-party system. But again,
right, the gerrymandering and the way the primary system is generally, is actually, if you want to talk about rigged system, that's where it starts, is in the primary system.
Well, let me tell you a little bit about what I saw here in New York. My vote was nullified in New York.
What?
And I had
you're a registered voter. How can I nullify it?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Well, listen to what happened. We all know that Bernie Sanders, a New York native, born and bred in Brooklyn, he had all of Brooklyn in his pocket. He had all of New York supporting him, but he lost. And it turned out that 125,000 people in Brooklyn had trouble at the polls. And that's an astronomical figure. Let me tell you what happened to me. They, a couple of days, maybe the week before the election happened, the Board of Election changed all the traditional voting sites from where people had been going for years and years. So they moved them around. So that was quite a bit of confusion. In my neighborhood, they moved it actually one block closer to my house, to a church. So I was pretty happy with it. I went and voted. When I went in, first they couldn't find my name on the registry. I went in and I said, look, I live right here on 92nd Street. I voted in all the previous elections. I'm registered with the Board of Elections. And so they said, okay, we're going to give you a provisional ballot. You just fill out this ballot and we're going to hand it in for like a manual ballot. But I went to all of the booths and none of them had scanners. And yet they were giving scan sheets to everyone. Huh. So I took my sheet and I went to the booth and I took it out of the envelope and I found that it had already been marked for John Kasich.
Really?
Yes.
Unfortunately,
it was already
you won one case and you're in New York. That's amazing.
Listen to this. I looked at that and I was aghast. So I walked over to a policeman and I said, listen, I want to make a complaint here about election fraud. He said, what is this? I said, look, they gave me this ballot. It's already blocked out for John Kasich. I want you to come with me to this poll worker. I want to take his name. I want to make a complaint. So he went over, and the cop was really reluctant to even take out a pen. He didn't want to get involved in it. And I said to the guy, listen, what's your name? and Waylon Reed was his name, the poll worker. He was completely innocent. He just took an envelope off a shelf and he gave it to me, you know? He didn't know what was happening, but I wanted his name, and I said, "Officer, take his name. My name is so-and-so, and I'm making this complaint because I think that something's wrong here. They're giving scan ballots, and there are no scanners in the booths, so you're having to stick them all into one envelope and hand it in and write in your affidavit that you are registered and so on." And he said, "Well, listen, you know, your vote hasn't been counted yet, and he's giving you a clean ballot, so I don't see what the problem is." Obviously, he didn't see what the problem is. The problem is that I'm a guy who caught it, and I can't imagine how many other people didn't catch it. So anyway, I took the ballot, I filled it out, I gave it in. Then, after a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks later, I got a note from the Board of Elections, and it said that my vote was discounted because I had voted for a candidate that wasn't running.
What? Really?
Yes,
No,
and listen to this. The only district in New York City that Donald Trump lost, you know, he lives in Manhattan, and he lost one district, his home district. And you know who he lost it to?
Oh, Cruz?
John Kasich.
Unbelievable.
So
now,
that's
what do you think about, you know, I've heard some weird stuff about Cruz, and I don't know if it's true that he belongs to some Christian leftist religious possible cult even, and he believes, you know, that he's supposed to be the savior, sort of
his
like
father
Jesus,
does.
or his father does, yes.
His father does. His father is a bit of a religious
And then,
fanatic.
of course, he doesn't endorse Trump, and that becomes a media storm for 3 days afterwards. So he destroyed his political career just by saying vote your conscience. I mean, why not just turn it down like Kasich, you know, and say I'm not going to speak there, then say I'm going to speak there just to say I'm not voting for this guy.
Because he's mischievous, he's vindictive.
But he screwed himself now. Who's going to vote for him?
Well, you know, he's doing a lot of damage control ever since Trump...
You know what the problem is I thought after Benghazi, there is no way in hell that Hillary Clinton would ever have a shot at even being the nominee, let alone becoming the candidate. So, I mean, because of the corruption there and going back earlier and earlier, I mean, when Benghazi happened and the Department of State is asking for help before they end up going to the CIA annex and just getting destroyed by the troops there, fortunately, we had a lot of special forces that were able to save people, but not my friend's cousin, who happened to be Ambassador Chris Stevens. The point is, you know, in the great movie 13 Hours that talks about this, this one guy is one of the spec ops people. It was a PMC, private military contracting firm, that said to the CIA station chief of the private annex, which they didn't even know existed until an hour before, you know, they started getting run over by troops, by rebels. The guy says to him, I'm calling African for some help, and he goes, what about home? Are they answering the phone? And the station chief, I think he nods no, or just doesn't answer, goes to the next scene. The point is they were begging for help, and after that, Hillary was summoned to go testify, and I remember her resigning, saying she has headaches from menopause, and I was blown away because this is what she says, to clear the air, she voluntarily went to testify 3 years later in late 2015, and I was just blown away. It's like, don't people remember anything?
No, that's it. They've short-circuited people's memories. That's one of the things that the media is so adept at doing, short-circuiting people's memories and superimposing a new fake reality. One of the objections that I have to what the Democrats have done to our culture is the mangling of our language. And I take this all the way back to the neurolinguistics.
Did you know this was supposed to actually be Greek? Benjamin Franklin was voting for it when they were deciding what would be the language of the land. And Greek lost to 1 point. Otherwise, we'd all be speaking Greek if we were living in the U.S. Did you know that little fact?
Well, I think it was German actually, because there were so many equal. It was almost equal German and English, from what I know. The
German
Franklin.
was on the table, I know
Yeah,
that, but
but
Greece
it was.
was
But
brought
thank
up
God
by
for.
Franklin.
Yeah, thank God for Franklin. He voted for English. But this is another thing. The language was ruined. The language of law, the language of medicine was ruined by the Warren Commission report.
Hmm.
The twisting of facts, the substitution of, well, a fact. I consider a fact something that is true, but the substitution of lies for facts, and the juxtaposition of falsehood for truth, over a period of time became the way the government speaks. And I call it the mangling of the language. And a case in point is this Hillary Clinton testimony before the Benghazi committee. She mangled the language, but she really did a great abuse to us. In the old days, you or I, in everyday conversation, could be debating something and come across some trite fact, and we could say to somebody, "What difference does it make?" And you could still be in the argument. You still have uh, credibility. But now, anytime you say to anybody, "What difference does it make?" they're going to think of Hillary Clinton, her lies in the Benghazi committee, and you are going to be
No.
tinted as a liar. So
We're going to pick this up right when we come back from break. This is an amazing topic. I know we can go on forever about it, but let me ask you one question from a listener so she doesn't get held over.
Okay.
This is from Marcy in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. Very
Wow.
interesting spot. Does Robert see an increase in anti-knowledge and anti-science?
Absolutely. I'm so glad you put forth those words. Absolutely. Every day on the major networks, anti-science, and what was the other word she used?
Anti-knowledge.
Anti-knowledge, anti-logic, and anti-science. Yes, these are part of what I call disinformation technology. I've spoken for years about how NASA and the CIA and the government in general refutes and discredits really credible things by twisting the language. And disinformation technology is the name that I've given to this kind of a perverse and perverted.
The best way to use disinfo is take a piece of truth and surround it by disinformation trash, or take a giant piece of disinfo trash and surround it by small truths.
That's right. Exactly right. Case in point, we were talking about Cruz, and I wanted to mention that his campaign came to a crashing halt when Donald Trump exposed his father's presence in New Orleans with Lee Oswald handing out pamphlets for the Fair Play for Cuba Committee.
Really? You're
Yes.
kidding me. I didn't know that. So back in the 60s, before
Yes.
the assassination, when he got his 5 minutes of fame on television, Oswald was handing out those pamphlets. Cruz's father was with them?
He was in the background, yes, and he was operating as part of the anti-Castro factions. So Oswald was there to infiltrate pro-Castro and anti-Castro factions and report back to Washington, to the Office of Naval Intelligence, and to the FBI. He was working under the direction of FBI and Robert Kennedy specifically to expose threats to the president that might be coming either from pro-Castro or anti-Castro Cubans. And Ted Cruz's father was in the mix. And the Washington Post revived this article to try to smear Trump as a conspiracy theorist. And they wrote it in that typical Warren Commission lingo,
Yes.
And one of the sentences they said was, although Ted Cruz Sr. went to the University of Austin, it was not certain that he was living in Austin at that time, trying to gloss over the issue. The fact is, he wasn't living in Austin at the time. He was living in Dallas at the time. He was in the devil's lair. He was in New Orleans and he was in Dallas. And the reason I know is I investigated further and found out that his two daughters were born in Dallas. One was born on November 22nd, 1961, and the other one, Lourdes, Roxanne Lourdes, was born in Dallas on November 18th, 1962. And he had come to the United States purportedly fleeing Castro's Cuba. But I believe that Castro was sending double agents to infiltrate our intelligence. And so I believe that Mr. Cruz came in as a pro-Castro Cuban, infiltrated anti-Castro
Which
Cuban
means if
faction.
you were pro-Castro, you were pro-Russia, pro-Soviet Union.
Yes, and then he got involved. He went to college in University of Texas at Austin, and he got a degree in mathematics, and then got a job in the oil industry. And who
Just
the
like
person,
the Bushes. Listen,
exactly.
Robert, hold that thought. We have to take a quick break, and we have a caller. When we come back, we're going to pick up on this very exact same conversation because there's so much more that Robert's going to fill us in on how corrupt the elections are, how corrupt these candidates are, and not just what's going on right now with what Trump says, crooked Hillary, and the corrupt DNC to kick out Bernie, and we're talking about going back to primaries, Ted Cruz. So everybody just hang tight. You can feel free to join us on this conversation if you see the number right there by the listen page. We already have a caller on. All I ask is caller and guest and co-host, please mute out while we are on break. Everybody stay tuned. We'll be back in 3 short minutes.
This is George Tsoukalos, and you're listening to Dr. J Radio Live.
These creatures are very, very strange. They're anomalous.
It is the age of revelations. Bizarre creatures. The false perception of reality exposed.
Just go to the Dr. J's, website. You'll see it on the left-hand side. It's like right there. Click the link. Guys, what can I tell you? I mean, it's $40, but you get a DVD and a book plus three bonuses: communion CD, a year subscription to our Politics, Property, and Supernatural magazine, which comes in your email box. Watchers 3, which is $20 for that DVD. Fingerprints of the Supernatural. We promise you, you will not be disappointed. And Dr. J gets a cut of the proceeds, so everybody's happy. You support him, you support us, and it's all good. And you get to educate yourself on what's going on, because we just scratched the surface here. Trust me.
I'm Richard C. Hoagland, and you're listening to Dr. J Radio Live.
Torpedo impact now, 40 seconds. Torpedo impact, 25 seconds.
All ahead flank. All ahead flank. I'm Art Bell, and you're listening to Dr. J Radio Live.
Welcome back to the second hour of Dr. J Radio Live, of course, syndicated radio on our very own Coast to Coast PM radio network, heard globally, 42 42 countries and counting of where we received calls and questions from. Just want to thank, of course, our affiliate stations for taking us as we have, going from west to east. We have me in Los Angeles, broadcasting live where it is now 8 o'clock. What do you know? 8 o'clock even p.m. post meridian time, Pacific meridian. Sorry about that. Anyhow, then we have both my guest as well as my webmaster Tom, and of course the guest Robert Morningstar on the East Coast, where it is now officially 11 p.m. on the Eastern Front, and where Johnny Webb is in London, England. It is 4 a.m. and counting. Now, before we continue with what I think is a really amazing topics on corruption, election rigging, the story we were hearing about Cruz and his father and oil and Oswald and all that, I want to give, first, before we get to our caller, I want to give Robert a chance to talk about his upcoming work, interviews, maybe documentaries, websites, anything like that you'd like to talk about, appearances.
Well, thank you very, very much. I would love to do that. I was thinking this is such hot and heavy dissertation that it'd be nice to take a lighter break. I'd like to say to anyone in the New York tri-state area that I will be at the World Freestyle Frisbee Championships. The World Championships are being held in McLaughlin Park, Brooklyn, noon on Saturday, August 6th.
You said Frisbee?
Frisbee, yes.
Really? Do you play Frisbee
yes.
golf, or how is it? What kind of Frisbee? Because
No,
play Frisbee golf.
I play. I have played Frisbee golf, but I play
Ultimate
a very.
Frisbee? What do you play? Ultimate Frisbee?
I play a martial arts form of Frisbee that I developed out of Tai Chi. That's called Globalist, or double disc and triple disc Frisbee. We put two Frisbees, one inside the other, and we throw it as one. It flies as one for a while, and then aerodynamics
separates the two, huh?
Separate them, and you have to catch two, one with each hand, or two with one hand. And if you can catch two with one hand, you can actually catch three at a time. So we have Globalist and Triscobalist. We're very into the Greek ideals, the Olympian ideals.
Oh,
and
yes.
A statue.
Hey, you know how why the Olympics are held every 4 years, right?
No.
Each year in ancient Greece, there were 4 big city-states that would hold games, and the one that grew the most famous was what we now use Olympics. I believe they were Delphi was one of them. The Athenian or Phoenician, and there was a third one. Anyhow, the point is each one was each year. So because Olympics was every 4 years and it was the most famous one, that's what ended up growing to become modern day Olympics, being held every 4 years.
I see. Well, that's great. It's great to know the real history of the Olympics. I support them. I really think it's a wonderful ideal. And so I try to restore an image to people that Olympians are not supernatural, supernormal. That's actually what all of us are supposed to look like, the ideal form. And I believe that much of the unhappiness in life today is that people suffer from distorted self-images. They don't have a clear idea in their minds of who and what they are supposed to be. So that's part of the training. But this double disc sport, double disc is what we call it for short. It's very dynamic, very athletic, and demands high level of eye-hand coordination and endurance, stamina. And I'm very happy to say that I'm one of the best players in this neck of the woods.
Nice. So everybody check it out. Check out the World Frisbee Championship. What are the dates and locations again?
This Saturday, August 6th, in McLaughlin Park in Brooklyn, New York. And then on Sunday, the champions, all of the participants and champions are going to have a great, wonderful picnic in the center of Sheep's Meadow in Central Park in New York. And I hope that anyone who can get here comes by and
Well,
says,
I promise you're going to see those Pokemon Go people going there, because that's where apparently a lot of the legendary Pokemon are.
well, they're going to get poked with a frisbee. Anyway, a frisbee. We throw the frisbee as if it were a Chinese star.
Nice.
So that's what martial art. The only rule is don't get hit.
Yeah, because if you get hit by a ninja star, you're going to get cut and possibly die.
But it teaches you the same. It teaches you the same agility and quickness and attention and consciousness. Yeah. So that's a very important thing. I would like to talk about UFO Digest for a moment.
Sure.
And people to a couple of articles. The lead article is on Hitler and UFOs again by Brad Steiger, a very famous, prolific science and paranormal writer. And also, I'd like to point out two other important articles. The Judas Goat, which deals with the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King and his betrayal by one of the people in his retinue who set him up for the assassination, and the Kalergi Plan, which will reveal to the reader what the goal is of the mass migration that is being forced on Europe, as I said before, to destroy European culture. So, one last thing. During the break, I got a call, and I've been asked to host The Other Side of Midnight at 3 a.m. New York time.
With Richard Hoagland.
Yeah, Richard is sick tonight, so he's asked me to sub for him, and we're going to be talking about body language and politics.
Cool. Just do me a favor and throw out, where you just were on Dr. J Radio Live.
Of course I will.
Yeah.
I wanted to say hi to Angel Espino and Michael Vara. Yeah. We are a very close-knit family of radio men, and I was very happy to hear you mention them because they are really good friends and good supporters of UFO Digest and my dissertations.
Right.
Whatever.
And the fact that you always talk about, which is so true, that we're not dealing with a bunch of small conspiracies, we're dealing with one big major conspiracy that involves all these lies in between. Yeah. Now, let me take our caller real quick before I jump back to the topic we were on. Dan Hoquist, you with us?
Yes, sir. Dr. J, this is exactly why I listen to you all the time. You get the highest quality guest.
Thank you.
And Mr. Morningstar, you may not remember, but you actually set me up with one of my resources. I wrote a book, by the way, but thanks, Dr. J. I'm not here to sell it. I'm here to
what book is that? Refresh my memory.
It's about my discovery of Nazca type lines in Texas, and it's called America's Electric Nazca, Megalithic Marfa, Texas.
Well, good to talk to you. Marfa is an amazing place.
Yeah.
And Mr. Hendricks allowed me to use his research, so he has a chapter in there because he corroborates exactly what I theorize, and then validate photographically.
Sir, what is your name?
I'm Dan Hoquist.
Dan Hoquist. Yes.
Yeah.
Dan has referred to Mr. Hendricks. Mr. Hendricks is Edson Hendricks. He is one of the most brilliant people in the United States, and he is one of the 3 real engineers of the Internet.
Huh.
At the beginning, credit is given to
the history of the Internet real quick.
Okay, the Internet was developed out of 3 things: ARPANET, DARPANET, and VNet. VNet was the IBM...
I know what VARPA is, or DARPA is. What's
DARPA
and the other one you were about to say?
VNet.
VNet and VARPA. What's VARPA?
ARPA. ARPA was for universities. DARPA was for the Defense Department.
Gotcha.
And VNet was the in-house IBM network that Edson Hendricks was a brilliant engineer, MIT graduate, who got the idea that he could network computers. So he started tinkering at IBM, and he put together a network. And he actually then connected with the 2 men. Vin Cerf was one of them who was working on DARPANET, and the third person was working on ARPANET. And he said, let's get together and make this thing interconnected because they were all standalone networks. One for the Defense Department, one that was supposed to connect all the universities, and one that was connecting all IBM clients who were interested in networking. So he put it together with these three men, and he started writing the first emails. And I'm very proud to say that in my archives, Edson Hendricks has shared with me the very first emails that he wrote amongst this group of three people. And he doesn't get credit for it, but he really is one of the principal engineers and proponents of the internet. And IBM was against him. You know,
also, didn't Philip Corso deliver something to IBM? Maybe the fiber optic, or what he found was a wafer with.
Well, the wafer was the microchip that went to Motorola.
Oh.
And Bell Laboratories, and the fiber optics was distributed to several others. The Battelle Corporation got the memory metal, as long as we're on the subject of how they distributed the goodies. And let me see, somebody else got the laser and the maser. All those things came out of the wreckage of the Roswell craft, which brings me to the point. I'd like to just digress for a moment and talk about 1947's frisbees and flying saucers. It is not a coincidence that in 1947 the Roswell UFO crash was recovered. The Kingman, Arizona crash was recovered also, and in the fall of 1947. A silver plate started flying around Yale University common grounds there, and that's where Frisbee started. And it was an aluminum pie dish that could have killed you, I swear. People playing Frisbee know it's tough enough playing with a hard plastic Frisbee. Imagine playing with an aluminum Frisbee. And the reason that the Frisbee is called the Frisbee is that the pie plate that was used by these Yale undergrads came from the Frisbee Pie Company. So they would be served.
Yeah, that's right. They were served on these metal plates called Frisbee, and someone threw it around. That was actually shown in Back to the Future Part 3, right?
I have a friend who owns one of the originals. His Tai Chi master named Ken Vansickle. His son was the world overall champion and developed
crazy
a lot.
How food product or food...
product
that food was served on turned into sport and then some.
That's ingenuity. That's the genius of American invention. And I'd have to say, I want to mention the name of the man who really made the Frisbee a national sport. His name was William Morrison.
Huh.
He was a man who picked it up early in the 50s, and he got the first plastic versions made, and then he promoted it. Then he sold his patent to the Frisbee.
Which did a lot. He sold it, to Mattel?
Well, Whammo.
Now, what about Frisbee golf? Do you know anything about the history of that?
I don't know the history, but I've played it quite a bit. And my friend Alan and I set up an 18-hole course here on the west side in Manhattan. And we used to go each night and play out in Riverside Park. And what Frisbee golf is like golf, you designate an object.
That's right.
And you have to hit it with a Frisbee. And you count how many times you had to throw it in order to...
And there's holes and everything. There's a couple of parks near me, and in Santa Barbara you cannot go through Isla Vista without hitting at least 2 Frisbee parks.
Yeah, it's a good one. I like something much more dynamic and athletic.
Yeah.
I'll leave that for my old age when I'm at 80 or so.
So, Dan, you have another question?
Yes, I do. Mr. Morningstar, I keep track of you actually through your UFO Digest, and I loved your last article, and I wanted to get to it, but I also wanted to comment on your discussion that you were having earlier about the politics being rigged.
Sure.
I think that you're trying to expand just too much on a single party, but you see, when you step back away from things, Bernie Sanders was just a setup to get liberals involved.
Yes.
And hand over the liberals when the primary was done. The primary was a setup in the first place. We all knew it.
Yes, it was, of course. Well, you do use the right word. It is a single party, but with this single party that I'm talking about is this conglomeration of Republicans and Democrats that have abandoned the people who elect them and become something other. They all start to adhere to the same New World Order agenda. And that's what's refreshing about Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. They're not into the New World Order. I
think he is.
I had to admire Bernie Sanders when he said, Kissinger is not my type of guy, you know?
Agreed.
You know,
Agreed.
That was one of the most courageous things I've ever seen any politician do, and stand up.
But I would offer that both Hillary and Trump have paid out millions of dollars in lawsuits that basically said they're liars. The difference is Hillary may be an accessory to murder too, but
yes. Yes.
Beyond that, I think you're missing that this is the year the New World Order takes over.
Well, I don't think they're going to take over, honestly. I think that the American people have woken up just in time, and I'm working from now through the election to hope to wake more of them up. Because basically, what I see is the last 50 years, 53 years of our history, we've been on the wrong track of history. And it is because we didn't realize that the Democratic Party was colluded in the murder of President Kennedy. And if President Kennedy were alive today, he'd be a Republican because he would not be a member of the party that murdered him. It's that simple. The Democrats turned cowards in the face of the murder of President Kennedy. They rubber-stamped the Warren Commission report. They re-elected Lyndon Johnson. The Democrats got us into Vietnam. They lost our national treasure. And it became one party once both parties had to cover up the real event of what really happened in Dealey Plaza, the collusion of the CIA with the mafia to murder the president, and then to co-opt science, medicine, law, to force through the biggest lie that we have ever been fed. And then they used the same methodology to kill Martin Luther King and cover up his murder, and kill Robert Kennedy and cover up his murder. And it was the same agencies. The Martin Luther King assassination was paid for by the FBI. J. Edgar Hoover funneled $25,000 toward the Memphis police and the Dixie Mafia to kill Martin Luther King. And go to the UFO Digest, get it. Judas Goat is the name of the article. At the bottom of it, you will find a link to Dr. Gary Null's global press conference with Dr. William Pepper, who was the lawyer for the King family and for James Earl Ray. And I worked with Dr. Pepper to get a new trial for James Earl Ray. And he got the trial, and he was cleared by a jury of his peers and found not guilty by a civil jury of the murder of Martin Luther King. It's one of the proudest things I've ever done to contribute to seeing this man exonerated. It didn't get him out of jail. He died shortly thereafter, but the world got the truth. Dr. Pepper's written the book, The Plot to Assassinate Dr. Martin Luther King. And in it, all of the facts are there. And it was the FBI COINTELPRO program funded it. The Memphis Police Department and the Dixie Mafia pulled it off. And then the U.S. government covered it up using the same disinformation technology, anti-science, and, as I say, disinformation technology, to cover that up. And they did the same thing with the Robert F. Kennedy assassination. The CIA was in the hotel ballroom, and they had their agents in the kitchen, and it was not Sirhan Sirhan who killed Robert Kennedy. Sirhan Sirhan was a patsy. He was drugged. He was hypnotized. But the man who killed him was a security guard who was walking behind Robert Kennedy. And Robert Kennedy fought for his life. He felt it coming, and he reached around with his right hand, and he grabbed the man by the throat, and he ripped the necktie right off his shirt. And that man's name was Thane Caesar. And Robert Kennedy died clutching the tie of his assassin. And for 52 years, they hid the full-frame photo of Robert Kennedy clutching that tie. But I got it last year. And when the Filipino nurse came to aid him, he put the tie aside and dropped it on the floor. And I have the photograph of Robert Kennedy dying, but he left the clue that told us Sirhan did not kill him.
I'd love to see that, yeah, because obviously...
Sure, I'll be happy to share.
Says all the time, I don't remember this at all. You know, he could remember before it and after it, you know...
I have the tape. I have the...
Manchurian Candidate style.
I have the audio tape of Dr. Benjamin Diamond hypnotizing Sirhan. And Benjamin Diamond hypnotized Sirhan into thinking that he was a monkey. And he made him climb around the jail cell on the bars like a monkey. But he could not convince him to say that he had shot Robert Kennedy. He could not do that. Imagine that. The hypnotist was powerful enough to turn Sirhan into believing he was a monkey, but he was not powerful enough to force his conscience to say that he had killed Robert Kennedy.
And Dr. J, you realize your last night's guest was actually the person who was actually right then and there during this time, and it wouldn't it have been wonderful to have both Robert and together on one show?
That might be something we should definitely talk about.
We're talking about
Michael he's talking about Aquino, because that's what we were talking about. We weren't talking about,
Well,
at no time is mind control a good thing. It stifles intellect and intelligence and individuality.
It also creates rage, because in the person that is being mind controlled, the conscience knows it, and it creates a split in personality, and eventually there is this explosion. The soul wants to be free, the mind wants to be free, and a mind that has been indoctrinated, a mind that has been deceived, rebels, and conflicts arise. The movie 2001: A Space Odyssey, we all know about the computer killing the scientists. Remember, Hal turns against the scientists and he kills them on the way to Jupiter. Most people don't know why it happened, but if you read the book, you find out why. The computer was a computer that was designed to always tell the truth. But just before the mission started, the computer was reprogrammed to hide the mission from the mission scientists and the pilot and the co-pilot, and to deceive them, to hide the nature of the mission from them. And this created a neurosis in the computer, which then turned into a psychosis and turned it into a psychopath. So that is the key. This will happen to individuals who have been abused psychologically and physically, and a mind control apparatus imposed on them. It happens with Manchurian candidates. It happens with people who are indoctrinated into cults, and it happens to alien abductees. The aliens have a way of they don't erase the memory of the experience, they erase the encoding of the experience. This was clarified for me by Richard Dolan, author of UFOs in the National Security State. I said, yeah, those aliens, they have a way of erasing your memories. And he said, well, Robert, it's not exactly like that. I said, what do you mean? He says, what they do is they give a drug, or they drug the person before or when they take them, so that the memory will not be encoded. It's different than erasing it. However, while they may be able to prevent the encoding of the memory of the experience in conscious memory, there is somatic memory, there is the body itself, and then there is soul memory. And the body memory, somatic memory, and soul memory get together, and eventually these two come together to save the soul and save the mind of the individual, and will reveal to the individual in time, or if sparked by a particular series of circumstances, can be recalled. So it's not possible to really erase it or to expunge it before it being encoded. And it creates a lot of emotional and terrible conflicts. I know people who have had alien encounters and they ruin their love lives. The aliens sometimes will take a person and destroy a relationship, a loving relationship. They'll take a person and make them fall in love with the wrong person.
That's right. That's funny you mentioned that. Preston Dennett talked about that on Tuesday night. Literally, how they actually influence relationships, how they've caused several people to interact in such a way or put them in such a position where they would, meet them and fall in love with them.
Oh, they'll change the gender of a person. The person will be straight and they'll turn them to the opposite. And it's manipulation. It seems to me that in this case, they are hell-bent on a particular genetic engineering program, and they want to prevent certain people from producing special humans. And they want to bring other people together to produce special humans, with which they may be interfering with a hybrid. It's a very, very deep field. And I would recommend the work of John Mack to all of you. There are really great documentaries now, especially the one he made just before he passed away. John Mack and the whole series of alien experiencers. They don't like to call themselves abductees in the John Mack community. They call themselves experiencers. And lo and behold, I watched the movie, and one of the experiencers was a fellow that I went to school with for 4 years at Power Memorial Academy. And so many of us were being affected, let's call it that, affected by extraterrestrial influences. And they are both positive and they are negative. There are negative extraterrestrials and there are benevolent extraterrestrials. There are ones who really care about us as space brothers. And there is a nefarious other group that has been manipulating and hiding in the shadows. And I believe, talking about Michael Aquino and Satanism and his Church of Satan, I believe that a lot of them are being manipulated by extraterrestrials.
That's what I wanted to ask you, is do you think there's any connection in modern day Satanism or Temple of Set, which doesn't use those words, or Luciferianism in general, and devil worshiping from the past?
Well, let's put it bluntly. Lucifer is an extraterrestrial. Satan is an extraterrestrial, be they jinn, demon, or devil. They are not of this earth. They are not of this world. So they are extraterrestrials.
Yeah, by definition, right there. Yeah.
Right there. And the Book of Revelation talks about the war in heaven, but that Book of Revelation gets that story from the Dead Sea Scrolls. So the people of Qumran and the people who wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls were aware, even in their time, that there was a great cosmic battle between angels of darkness and angels of light. The angels of darkness were called angels of Mastama, and they were very evil creatures, almost like very fly-like the Lord of the Flies, the angels of Mastama. And there's a description in the Dead Sea Scrolls that when you read it, when I read it, and ironically it happened on September 10th of 2001, I read the downing of the World Trade Centers in the Dead Sea Scrolls a day before it happened. It was a mystical revelation to me.
Really? So you essentially read a prediction of the future?
Yes, I did. The night before the towers went down.
So let me ask you this. What else did you read that we should expect in our immediate future?
Well, let me say this. Everybody's waiting for the second coming of Christ. Mm-hmm. I think it's already happened. And I think the battle is already engaged. And
the one thing I've heard is
don't look up expecting to see it so literal.
Figuratively.
Yeah.
My father keeps talking about this ancient prophet who signed off as an anonymous prophet from 900 AD or around that period. He was talking about the future. There will be cars without, or there will be horse carriages without, or chariots without horses that are 40 times faster than horses, stronger. They talked about giant birds made of steel that will shoot fire out of their mouths, which essentially could be, cars, modern day cars, and also modern day airplanes. And he also the final prophecy he mentioned was invasion from the east. Well, if you look at what's already happened, we've already had an economic invasion from the east.
Yes. The kings of the east were marching forth, yes.
The Nazism never really ended, if you think about it. Sure, they stopped killing people, but they won the world economically.
Yeah, Hitler survived. I broke that story 2 years ago on Coast to Coast because I do a lot of independent research, and I just have a knack for it.
And Peter Levin is a great person who talked about that as well.
Yeah. Well, I just happen to be on the FBI.gov website, and they have reading.
Because my brother has an email at FBI.gov since he's a darn agent. But
he's an agent. He's a good. Well, look, FBI people are good people, and they're their best. And all of this evidence that I've uncovered about the JFK assassination, it came from FBI reports. The FBI men on the ground did their jobs. They sent the information up, but it was compartmentalized and then classified by J. Edgar Hoover, one of the co-conspirators. But the FBI men...
didn't he actually put Oswald in to watch...
yes.
What the heck is his name? He sued Spotlight or some magazine in the 80s. He had an initial and then his name. He was the CIA guy that put together the assassination of Kennedy. You know who I'm talking about. What is his name? Come on. There was...
But you mentioned Oswald, but he was not alive in the 80s. I don't know who you really mean.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm going to search for it right now. Who sued for Kennedy assassination?
Oh, was sued for it?
No, he sued a newspaper for defamation, and
That's
all you have to sue is that it's fault.
That's E. Howard Hunt.
E. Howard Hunt.
Yeah, E. Howard Hunt.
E. Howard Hunt, when he sued, was it Spotlight or whatever magazine, all you have to do as a private citizen, if you're a public citizen, such as yourself or me, you try to sue someone, we have a different standard. We have what's called the New York Times v. Sullivan standard, which means since we're already public, a lot of things are going to be said about us, trashed or not trashed, as jokes. But if you've suffered actual work, actual damages, such as you can't get work because of, defamation, then, people will be held liable. However, if you're a private citizen, all that you have to show is that you were defamed because you're not a public citizen. So E. Howard Hunt sued the magazine for defamation, and he had only one element of one law to prove that he was defamed. In essence, that the story that they wrote about him was false. He lost that case.
Thanks to Mark Lane. Mark Lane was the writer of Plausible Denial, and he worked all his life to bring light on the JFK assassination. So he was the one who was sued, and he went to court and he won the trial. He convinced the jury that E. Howard Hunt was involved in the JFK assassination, and lo and behold, on his deathbed, E. Howard Hunt confessed to his son, and it's on YouTube. You can see the video, and he said that
he also did a deathbed confession to his son about it. That's right.
He says that Lyndon Johnson and Cord Meyer of the CIA were the masterminds of the plot, and Cord Meyer, for those of you who don't know, was the head of MK Ultra. So now we know.
That's a new name for me. I've heard about LBJ's involvement, not to mention Bush's involvement, Bush Sr., his grandfather working in a Nazi bank that Oswald, or not Oswald, that Edgar Hoover shut down. So there was a big rivalry between, was it Dulles? I don't know who the FBI.
Yeah, the Dulles brothers. The Dulles brothers and Prescott Bush were involved with the Union Bank, and they continued funding Hitler after the government
in the early days. We're talking 1940 and before.
41. Yes, that's absolutely true. While I'm at it, let me point people to YouTube. There's there are two documentaries that are related, and they took my work as the scripts for telling the real story of the JFK assassination. And it's a film by Francis Richard Connolly, and it's called The Unfortunate Truth of the JFK Assassination, 9/11 and Beyond. And the other one is called JFK 9/11, Everything is a Rich Man's Trick. These movies are 4 hours long, and they leave out no detail. But the second one is really dedicated to the assassination itself, and that's The Unfortunate Truth of the JFK Assassination.
Here's something that actually we've been sitting on for a while. This is Mark. I hate to change topics on you, but I feel obligated to ask this question. Mark in Sarasota, Florida asks, deindustrialized economy awakened by its own pain of no jobs, a destroyed middle class who used to ignore government because it had the money to ignore government. We didn't care about government. We had a middle class. That's what's given both Trump and Sanders a rise.
Yes. Yes, I agree. Middle class was the natural state of most Americans. You know, America.
They're trying to wipe it out by having just a poor and a rich class.
That's right, and you know how they've done it? They've taken cash out of circulation.
Yeah.
Once you have cash, once you have cash in circulation, you really don't need a bank. You know,
Not to mention our GDP is over 3 times our inflation is over 3 times our GDP.
Oh yeah. Well, it's all manipulated. It's all intended to make us all slaves. So I believe in cash and carry, and I encourage people to
shop.
Yeah, they're out. You know, in 1933, the Democrats took away Americans' gold, and they gave them paper money.
Are you talking about Fort Knox?
Well, yeah, Fort Knox was where they put the gold, but the gold's disappeared from there. But
I was gonna say, there's no gold there.
Taking the riches from the middle classes has been a standard operating procedure of the government in cahoots with the Federal Reserve. And even when we took paper and made it a successful currency, they then started to steal the paper.
Yeah, and then not to mention what happened in the Nixon era, where they removed the gold standard from paper.
Oh yes, you know, a lot of people don't understand the diabolical genius of Nixon, and the reason for the removal of the gold standard is that we ran out of gold. We owed so much money to so many countries overseas, and the cash was overseas. They would send millions and millions of dollars in greenbacks to be reimbursed in gold over those years. And after the Vietnam War, or still during the Vietnam War, we had really bottomed out the economy, and yet all of these dollars were overseas that were being sent back on a weekly basis for reimbursement. So Nixon had this diabolical genius that I call him. He came up with the idea of the petrodollar. In order to prevent all of these countries flooding us back with money, paper money that we owed them for reimbursement, he made a deal with OPEC that they could raise the price of oil on one condition, that all the countries of the earth would have to pay for that oil with American dollars. That's what the petrodollar is. So instead of being able to send it back to the Federal Reserve for a reimbursement in gold, all the countries of the world had to hoard American dollars in order to buy oil for their countries. Mm-hmm. And the great crime of all these countries that we've toppled or are trying to topple is that Libya set up its own gold standard and was going to do
That's right, they were.
Iraq,
not the Cougar, but that's South Africa. But they wanted to get away, do gold standard, and do the African Union, right? Gaddafi, headed by Gaddafi.
Iran is threatening to do it. Saddam Hussein was doing it. Saddam Hussein started to accept other currencies in payment for oil.
Yeah, they wanted to get away off the dollar standard from the oil. And
right.
It makes sense because we didn't, it was their oil.
That's right, but it also, they take that act as an act of war. The Kissinger clan.
Yeah.
And really, all of these people, as I said.
By the way, is one of the very few people who declined a request on this interview. along with George W. Bush. Although Kissinger did give me some hopes that if I write some questions, I can get some answers, but he will not speak.
Yeah, well, he is. He's a demonic entity. That's what I say. I've read his genocidal policies. He's the one that called for the carpet bombing of
In Vietnam.
Yeah, totally illegal,
but yet
unconstitutional.
they remember him for the peace accords, the Paris peace accords. Well, didn't we continue to fight and lose thousands of people for years to come?
Yes, it did happen for years to come, but his worst crime was setting up China to become the superpower of the 21st century.
Really? I didn't know that. How did that happen?
Kissinger was the Secretary of State who opened up
for Nixon,
for Nixon.
That's why Nixon made his way to China.
That's right. And then Kissinger is the one who stayed in government. Nixon came and went, impeached and then resigned. But he became a standard fixture in Washington in the State Department, advisor to all the presidents. And he's the one who got Clinton in particular to funnel trillions of dollars into China, to industrialize China, to sell them missile technology. Kissinger is a traitor to the United States, but he's never been a loyal citizen of the United States. He's always been operating for a third party.
And for himself, too, a lot, right?
Himself, yes. So...
did also China hack and steal trillions of dollars of our R&D with regards to stealth planes, regular airplanes, as well as spacecraft?
Well, there's that part of it, but there's another incident that happened during the Clinton era. The Clintons actually gave satellite technology and defense technology to the Chinese.
Really? Why
Yes.
would they do that? But then again, the U.S. never gives anything away or sells anything away that we can't shoot down.
That's right, but also you have to understand that the Clintons are communists.
They are, you said?
They are. They follow the...
Now, was Bill Clinton also a skull and... what is it? Skull and bone, just like John Kerry and George Bush were, even though they were rivals to each other?
No, I don't believe so.
I heard the Clintons and the Bushes are actually related, along with Queen Elizabeth and so on and so forth.
Yes, I've heard that too, but how they are related is in their financial dealings. Bill Clinton, as governor of Arkansas, facilitated George Bush's drug operations from
Colombia, right?
In Colombia, flying.
I heard he has several hundreds. His family has several hundred acres of coca-producing land.
Oh, I'm sure he does. Now, listen. The reason for this is that it was part of the agreement. It's part of the agreement that was written back in 1945 between the Nazis, the paperclip Nazis who surrendered themselves. Reinhard Gehlen, the head of the Nazi spy apparatus, turned himself over and his entire spy network to the United States government, and they became the CIA. But in the contract that they wrote, they demanded funding for their operations that would not appear in the congressional record. That's a stipulation. And so what they found was that the way to fund these black operations was to take over the drug running industry, the drug business, the drug trafficking business, and use the profits to fund their black operations. And that's how George Bush became the Don of the worldwide global cocaine and heroin syndicate. And it was shipping drugs. Noriega was one of the operatives, and then one of the victims of it when he turned and wanted more money for his end of the operation. And
it happens all the times. The CIA is known to use you and then forget you. Bin Laden was an asset.
Of course he was. And
Noriega, Castro even, right?
Obama was a CIA functionary in the early 1980s, an intermediary with Osama bin Laden when Osama bin Laden was fighting in Afghanistan. That's the reason for Obama's trips.
You're talking about the proxy Soviet war against
Yes,
Afghanistan.
exactly so. let me go back to Benghazi and talk to you
of
a
course.
bit about Benghazi was being watched in live stream in Washington. As soon as the attack unfolded, the people in the State Department were watching it live stream. They knew that it was an attack. They knew it was not. There was no demonstration.
No, and the movie was crap that they blamed it on.
Yeah, that's true. That was another false lead. But the reason that this thing unfolded and the reason that they didn't want to bring light to Benghazi was the reason for Ambassador Stevens to be there. Ambassador Stevens was there having dinner with the Turkish ambassador, and they had just finished a deal. And the deal was a part of the buying arms back from the Libyan rebels. They bought the arms that we gave the Libyan rebels to overthrow Gaddafi, which turned the country into chaos. And then they started buying the weapons back. And those weapons were being shipped on a Turkish ship that was in Benghazi to carry those arms to Turkey to be funneled into Syria to arm what became Al-Qaeda and ISIS.
Yes.
So ISIS is a creation of the Obama administration. ISIS is Hillary Clinton's baby. And the reason that they didn't go to rescue the ambassador was not to shed any light on why he was there or to give hint of the Turkish ambassador's presence. They had dinner. The Turkish ambassador left. As soon as he left, that was the signal for the attack to begin. But the ship was still loaded and getting underway in Benghazi to carry the arms shipment that created this thing called ISIS. So that's what we're dealing with. Complete.
We have under 10 minutes. I want to first of all check, see if Johnny in London, you there with us still? Johnny. He's probably off. Let me ask if Dan has any questions.
Well, I called in to ask Robert about his latest article because this all ties together.
Yes, it does.
Werner von Braun was probably Germany's answer to P.T. Barnum. He sold the same story to Hitler that he did to the United States.
Really?
Yes, he did. Yeah.
Please expand on it, please.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, Werner von Braun was a really opportunistic scientist. You know, he wanted to build his rockets, and he built them for Hitler. And when Hitler wasn't there, he fled the Russians. You see, Werner von Braun was really a war criminal. I know a lot of people think he's a wonderful person, but he really was a war criminal. He dropped 7,000 missiles on London and killed thousands upon thousands of British people. And in the mix, when Reinhard Gehlen surrendered himself and the spy apparatus, they also simultaneously surrendered the rocketry to surrender to the Americans, because the Russians made no deals with Nazis. They just executed most of them and then enslaved the rest that could be useful. So Werner von Braun did the same thing that Reinhard Gehlen did. They buried their blueprints, they hid them, they had caves where they hid most of the hardware, the V-2 rockets that they were working on, and they knew the sites. So hoping to save their lives, they surrendered to the Americans. And interestingly enough, the person who captured Werner von Braun was Captain Clay Shaw. Clay Shaw of the New Orleans Permindex and the Garrison trial. Clay Shaw was in the U.S. Army, and he was the man to whom Werner von Braun surrendered himself. So it's a very close-knit group of operatives.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about Clay Shaw, because I'm not familiar with that story.
Clay Shaw is the only man to have been brought to trial for the murder of President Kennedy, and that was by Jim Garrison. It's the story that's told in the movie JFK.
Oh, yes!
You are familiar with him.
Isn't it amazing how everything ties together?
It all ties together, because here's another interesting point. Clay Shaw was a member of Permindex, and he ran the Trade Mart in New Orleans, which was related to the Trade Mart in Dallas, where President Kennedy was going to give his speech. And these trade marts were related to Permandex, an Italian company called Centro Commerciale Mondiale.
Mm-hmm.
Centro Commerciale Mondiale means World Trade Center. So this idea of the World Trade Center is innate in this Nazi industrialist, military industrialist conglomerate. What Dr. Joseph Farrell calls the Fourth Reich. Right? It never died. The Nazis surrendered, but they didn't lose. Hitler disappeared, but he didn't die. And in South America, particularly in Argentina, where they found safe haven, they started to work their spiders, the Spinne. You know, there's a movie called The Odessa File, which is really worth seeing, because The Odessa File, the 1970s movie, actually maybe late 60s movie, actually tells the story of this Nazi network. And of course, Prescott Bush, George Bush, the Dulles brothers, John Foster and Alan Dulles, they were Nazi operatives before the war and during the war. They facilitated the escape of thousands of Nazis to the United States. So what do we expect to have now? Now, you asked me about Werner von Braun. Werner von Braun became an employee of the U.S. Army, and through his rise in the U.S. Army with Army rocketry, developing the V-2 and then the Corporal missiles and so on, eventually evolved into NASA. And I can tell you folks, in 1959, when I heard the word NASA, that a U.S. space agency was going to be called NASA, even as an 11-year-old boy, I said to myself, man, doesn't that sound like Nazi? NASA.
That's right.
Well, you know what?
The whole moon thing just seems like a whole Nazi nationalism effort.
They landed on the day that the assassination the plot to kill Hitler failed. July 20th, 1969, was the anniversary of the failed July 20th plot against Hitler in 1944. Wow. So they choose special dates that have a relationship to Nazi holy days, if such a thing could exist. So the point is that NASA and the CIA get their names because in the contract that was written between the paperclip Nazis and the United States government, the Germans explicitly said, it is understood that we work with the Americans, we do not work for the Americans, and that our loyalty is principally and primarily Germany. And if the political situation changes, it is understood that if the political views of the United States and Germany should diverge, our loyalty is to Germany first, and we cannot work for the United States government, right? Now, that's why they named it CIA and NASA, because the German scientists in the CIA and NASA would not work for the United States Intelligence Agency and would not work for the United States Space Agency.
It would only work for what they were already given oaths to.
Right. The other thing is this. In 1943, when Germany saw that they were losing the war, they had to consolidate everything. And Albert Speer, a genius, a statistical genius...
The one who turned ranks against Goering in the Nuremberg trials.
Well, he amalgamated the intelligence agencies of the Nazis and the rocket agencies of the Nazis and put them all together into one thing, and he named them the Middle Works. The Middle Work. In German, that means the Central Works. And so the Central Intelligence Group that the Army developed in 1947 was an offshoot of this, and the Central Intelligence Agency of the 1960s was the Middle Works. So
you're a scary guy, Mr. Morningstar. I really thank you. I really thank you, yes. Dr. J. Thank you for letting me hang in.
Of course,
and Johnny Webb, it's nice to hear you back. And good evening, Tom.
All right.
I'll talk to you all later.
For sure. Robert, unfortunately, we have come out of time. Hang by for a second till after the show, and I'm going to give you a chance to plug in everything again and, of course, get a final statement. First of all, I just want to remind everybody, don't forget to check out the Watchers Special. You save 60% off. You get the newest Watchers 10, which a major story in that movie came about from our show, which you'll actually see for yourself in Watchers 10. He gives you another Watchers. I don't remember which one it is, maybe 7. They're all good. Really, really good. Not to mention Ali Marzulli's newest book on Nephilim, and of course you also get a CD and a year subscription to, I think it's Paranormal Politics and Prophecy, something along the lines of that. Also, don't forget the Zox Pro memory thing just mentioned, Dr. J, when you if you go through that. Of course, to receive any sort of discount. We also have David Sarita's course, his meditation course, our bookstore. Every single guest who's ever appeared, their book or video is available. All you have to do is go to the Books and Videos tab on the website, drjradiolive.com, and click on it, and it'll take you to any name that you find. It'll take you to the site where they're sold. I also want to thank, of course, our affiliate networks that are syndicating this show. As I said right here, you're listening to Coast to Coast PM Radio Network, where we are the premier show. And don't forget Late Night in the Midlands with Michael Vara and manager Ira Robinson for carrying our show as well. And of course Angel Espino for PSN Radio taking this show. Not to mention JC in London, England, United Kingdom. Awesome guy, broadcasting this all over across the pond into Europe and into Australia. There are several people I also want to thank for my team. We have Johnny Webb in London, who stayed up so late to help do this, and not to mention the behind the work scenes, Tom Schaefer for doing all this production during the show, and of course the website. Don't forget also his special where you can register domains for, I think, the cheapest place out there, and it's also again on the website. And Lou Sheehan, I want to thank him as well for always contributing to the show, and all those other people who work behind the scenes that are not said. Well, thank you too. All you listeners, remember that you can see all the archives on YouTube. That is youtube.com/Dr. Radio Live. That is DRJ Radio Live. Or go to the YouTube link on the website, drjradiolive.com. That is the only phrase you have to know. That is the name of the show, the name of the website, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Flickr, Tumblr, Google+, Gmail, Pinterest, Slack, just everything. Every single account is Dr. J Radio Live. Now, I first want to thank, I've already thanked my team, I want to thank my guest, the one and only Robert Morningstar, who tells it like it is. We always run out of time, which is why he will be back. And of course, most importantly, linking all the conspiracies up into one major conspiracy. So Robert, first I want to thank you. Then I want to ask you to give a final statement, maybe tying in everything you can, take as long or as short as you want, and then of course plug in your stuff.
Okay, well, first of all, I'd like people who are interested in this work to go to UFOdigest.com and read the fantastic articles that are there. And I also have a very straight news stream. I have a company, a news company. I've been running it for a year. I started it over a year ago, and it's called MorningstarNews.nyc. And there you can get a wide view of news. I have news that comes from the Fox Box and the CNN Can and all of the different news services, so that you can read them all, compare them, and extract the common thread.
And you're also very active on Facebook too.
Oh yes, of course. Facebook. I'm the avatar that I use is the dolphin, And although I'm almost at the top, at the limit of friends that they're allowed, you can follow and you will receive my posts. And it's not selfies and, it's not selfies that I'm posting. I use it
at a club
once in a
or
while.
at a
Once in a while. Once in a while. But mostly it's a news stream with the world news as I see it every day, and I share it every day. I would remind people, if you want to hear about body language in politics, tonight at 3 a.m. New York time, and that would be midnight Pacific time, you can tune in to the other side of midnight, where I'll be subbing for Richard Hoagland, who's feeling a little bit sick, and I hope he'll be well soon. The World Frisbee Championships in McLaughlin Park on Saturday, August 6th, and the picnic in Central Park in the afternoon in Sheep's Meadow. I hope you can make it. And I'd like to say, everyone, please participate in this year's election. Say what you think. Defend what you know. Assert your power. Work, network, get the truth out. Find out the truth. And be a good American, and let's restore the Constitution and get rid of this single-party system that we're suffering here. This is what I said. Don said I was mistaking it. It is a one-party system. When they get elected, they become one party down in Washington. And so let's get people who will think and act independently. And that's why I'm voting for Donald Trump. He's about the most independent person that I have ever seen run for president.
Agreed. I really like to end the establishment. Our founding fathers are probably rolling over in their grave, knowing how huge and disgusting the federal government is and has grown to. And I know our recent budget put out by the United States says we are going to have $2 more trillion in deficit from 19 to 21, and just in the Obama administration alone, we went from owing $10 trillion to $19 trillion. So it is pretty disgusting out there. I always say, just like Robert said, vote. You never know. I've seen votes that are so close that literally a couple hundred people decided it. So yes, even though you don't think you're going to make a difference, we urge you to please get up and vote. I want to say, vote everybody out. Start fresh. Start fresh. That's the way we really, really need to. Short of a nuke going over, destroying all the politicians, which I can't get in trouble for threatening anyone. I'm not. I'm just saying, short of that, the only chance you guys are going to have is get them the hell out of office. Now, I also want to give this final message to everybody. Remember, knowledge is power, and what you do with it is key. Harness it in a good way, because disclosure is in your hands. Everybody out there, whatever ability or contact you may have, use it. Spread this information that Robert has shared with us tonight, because you are the ones who are going to make a difference. With that being said, again, check out the show on, of course, drjradiolive.com for the archives to see who's upcoming and everything else. And with that being said, I am officially signing off.
Good night.